Chapter 1. Earth, Frontier 233, Border Fortress Number 7. A middle-aged man stood on the fortress wall with a group of students, gazing at the mist not far away, and began to explain slowly. 2,000 years ago, in the mid-21st century, the first white mist appeared in southern Africa. The joint investigation team from countries worldwide entered the mist to research. Half a month later, the team was completely lost. 6 months later, South Africa experienced a 20-fold increase in psychiatric cases. Many patients recounted seeing monsters in their dreams, but could not describe their appearance in detail. Some mental patients exhibited extreme aggression after falling ill, with severe cases experiencing physical mutations. Their ethical concepts also became radically different from normal humans. 2 years later, the second mist appeared in the center of the Pacific Ocean. Soon, countries along the Pacific Rim saw a significant rise in psychiatric patients, exhibiting the same symptoms as those in South Africa. Scientists discovered through their research that these white mists emitted special magnetic radiation. This radiation directly affected the human psyche, and mental deterioration consequently led to physical deterioration. As scientists predicted, the first city engulfed by the mist was Sapporo, Japan. Within 5 hours of communication disruption, 1/3 of the city's population showed signs of mental deterioration, and 1/5 experienced physical mutations. 10 hours after the mist appeared, Sapporo went silent. Residents who escaped the mist mutated within 5 days of containment. The survival rate was 0%. Although 2,000 years have passed, and the white mist areas have expanded, humanity has developed some resistance to the mental radiation. However, a normal person still cannot survive within the mist. "Teacher!" At this moment, a young man raised his hand, his voice sounding peculiar. The middle-aged man nodded, gesturing for him to speak. "Teacher, is it really true that no normal person can survive in the mist?" The middle-aged man nodded sternly. "Yes, no normal person can." "Then, what about that person?" The youth trembled as he pointed towards the mist. Many of the other students were also staring in the direction of the mist, their eyes wide with fear. The middle-aged man, facing his students, had his back to the mist. He saw the expressions on their faces. He froze for a moment, then abruptly turned his head towards the mist. From within the white mist, a figure emerged, staggering. He walked slowly across the desolate land, each step seemingly taken with great difficulty. The middle-aged man's eyes widened further, and he murmured, "Normal people indeed cannot survive in the mist. Those who can survive are either not normal or not human." Ethan Carter, having just emerged from the mist, looked up at the sun in the sky. Long tendrils writhed atop the golden sun. The entire sun seemed to inhale and exhale like a living organism or a beating heart. Ethan Carter's gaze swept across the surroundings. Under the azure sky, faint, massive, distorted phantoms could be seen, flickering in and out of existence. Faint wails and cries from the depths of the earth also reached Ethan Carter's ears intermittently. Faced with all this, Ethan Carter's emotions were unfazed. He had spent too long in the mist. From the initial fear and tension upon entering the mist, to the ensuing loneliness and madness, it all eventually transformed into numbness. Moreover, the sights Ethan Carter had witnessed before emerging were far more chaotic than what he saw now. Ethan Carter took a deep, almost greedy breath of air, and then a manic grin spread across his face. "Ha ha ha ha, I'm back. I'm finally back. I can finally go home." Ethan Carter took a step forward, intending to move, when hunger and exhaustion washed over him. His vision darkened, his steps faltered, and he collapsed heavily onto the ground. Base City Number 116, Mist Affairs Administration Bureau. In a metal room, Ethan Carter lay on a hospital bed. His body, arms, and legs were secured to the bed frame by black metal restraints. 3 individuals dressed in black trench coats stood to one side, observing Ethan Carter with serious and vigilant expressions. The leader, a middle-aged man with black hair, held a report, his expression unreadable. Name unknown, race, human physical strength, ordinary mental strength, ordinary mental pollution level, 0%. Heh. He shook his head, a complex smile on his face. Beside him, a young woman with black hair rolled her eyes. Captain Lin, you're still looking at that report. It must be wrong. How can there be a human with 0% mental pollution in this world? Even newborn babies are exposed to mental radiation in the womb, so their pollution level can't be 0%. The other, a young blonde man wearing glasses, adjusted them and said sternly, "But the inspection department insists they've retested 24 times, even using comparative methods like testing other people and switching instruments to ensure it wasn't a device malfunction. The final conclusion is still 0% mental pollution." I don't believe it. Humans with 0% mental pollution could only exist on Earth before the mist appeared. Something must have gone wrong. The woman's beautiful eyebrows furrowed, and she stared intently at the unconscious Ethan Carter. Even if such a human existed, it wouldn't be someone who just walked out of the mist. Samuel Grant casually placed the report on a nearby table and took out a cigarette from his pocket, lighting it and exhaling slowly. What Lily Brooks said is right. The mist is home to a large number of mutated individuals, calamities, and even servants of evil gods. An ordinary person cannot possibly emerge from it alive. Brian Cooper nodded in agreement. Even fully armed mist exploration teams had a mortality rate exceeding 50% during their expeditions. For an ordinary person to emerge from the mist unscathed, impossible. If you ask me, he's definitely a mutated monster, or even a servant of an evil god. It's possible he received a divine blessing and used unknown means to prevent us from checking his specific information. This was not an impossible scenario. In fact, there had been precedents. Otherwise, they wouldn't have bound the unconscious patient so securely. Emily Foster's eyes flashed with a sharp glint, and her smile turned somewhat sinister. "Captain Lin, why don't we kill him while he's still unconscious?" Samuel Grant slowly shook his head. "No, even infiltrators disguised as servants of evil gods have never shown a 0% mental pollution level. Since the birth of the mist, he should be a unique individual. Perhaps we can learn a method to eliminate mental pollution from him." "But Captain, what if he really is a servant of an evil god?" Samuel Grant looked directly at Emily Foster. "Isn't that why we're here?" Emily Foster fell silent, her gaze fixed on the figure on the bed, still filled with cold hostility. Samuel Grant sighed softly. "Lily Brooks, you've been under too much stress lately. Your mental pollution level has reached the warning line. It wasn't your fault last time." Brian Cooper also nodded. "Yeah, Lily Brooks, maybe you need to take a break. How about after this is over, you take a paid long leave and go travel?" Emily Foster pursed her red lips and said coldly, "No need. I know my own condition best. I'll recover in a few days." Just then, Ethan Carter on the bed let out a low groan. The three of them tensed, alert, and looked at Ethan Carter. The next moment, a hoarse, weak voice emerged from Ethan Carter's cracked lips. "Water." Chapter 2. Ethan Carter's voice was very faint, but the three of them heard it clearly. Their expressions flickered, and they exchanged glances. Brian Cooper asked uncertainly, "Did he just say he wanted water?" Samuel Grant chuckled. "The inspection report indicates his body is severely malnourished and in urgent need of hydration and energy. This does align with the report." Emily Foster sneered. It also fits the ordinary person persona. Samuel Grant and Brian Cooper exchanged exasperated smiles. Brian Cooper took out a thin plastic tube, over 3 meters long, and submerged one end into a water bottle. With a flick of Brian Cooper's wrist, the usually soft tube stiffened as if made of steel. Standing 3 meters away, he inserted the tube into Ethan Carter's mouth. Then, With a slight gesture of his finger towards the water bottle, the water within defied common sense, flowing from the ground up the tube and into Ethan Carter's mouth, bit by bit. Ethan Carter's first sensation upon waking was a dry, parched throat and extreme hunger. But he was ecstatic. He had wandered in the endless mist for an immeasurable time, never feeling hunger or thirst, nor experiencing fatigue. In fact, he hadn't even felt alive. Now he could feel thirst again, feel hunger. This made him keenly aware that he was alive. The hunger and thirst instinctively drove him to seek water. Soon, a cool sensation entered his mouth. It was water. He drank greedily, and gradually he felt his spirit seem to recover slightly. He managed to open his eyes with difficulty. The first things he saw were the piercing glare of the incandescent lights and a gray-black metal ceiling. Ethan Carter stared blankly at the light for a moment, then slowly turned his head to look to the other side. There stood 3 people. A middle-aged man with short black hair, a full beard, and a scar on his left cheek. A young blonde foreign man with glasses, appearing somewhat shy and refined. A young woman with long, wavy black hair, beautiful enough to rival a celebrity. All 3 looked at him with what seemed like suspicion. Ethan Carter didn't ponder the reason. He didn't even notice his inability to move. The corners of his mouth gradually turned up, his smile widening, and his voice took on a manic tone. Heh heh, heh heh, ha 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 ha. Humans, there are humans. I finally see humans. I'm back, I'm really back. Ethan Carter's manic laughter startled Samuel Grant and the other 2. They became as alert as if facing a formidable enemy. Samuel Grant's right hand distorted, transforming into a pale bone blade formed from flesh and bone. With a thought, Brian Cooper's mind moved, and steel needles flew from his pocket, swirling in midair. Emily Foster's brow contorted, and a cold, emotionless eye appeared, white light flowing within it. Seeing their transformations, Ethan Carter's smile froze, then gradually vanished. He looked at them and they looked back at him. The air became deathly still. After a moment of mutual staring, Ethan Carter, with clear confusion on his face, asked, "Are you humans?" Samuel Grant slowly took a drag from his cigarette, narrowing his eyes as he scrutinized the confused Ethan Carter. "That's a question I should be asking you. Are you human, or what are you?" "Of course I'm human. As far as I know, humans don't have hands that can turn into blades, nor can they control objects with their minds, nor do they grow eyes on their foreheads." Huh. Ethan Carter stared intently at Emily Foster. In his vision, a swirling mass of white mist surrounded her. Within the mist were countless eyes. It seemed her body was not made of flesh and blood, but entirely of eyes. Ethan Carter's long-dormant brain slowly began to function. Are human bodies made of eyes? These eyes scanned their surroundings, seemingly sensing his gaze. They paused, then collectively turned towards Ethan Carter, their gazes cold and emotionless. After a moment of eye contact, Ethan Carter tilted his head slightly. "What are you looking at?" The instant he spoke, the white mist within Emily Foster surged, and all the eyes projected ferocious and distorted expressions. The next moment, Emily Foster's face contorted, and she suddenly bent over, gagging. Samuel Grant and Brian Cooper looked at Emily Foster in alarm. "Lily Brooks." Samuel Grant reached out, only to see a fissure suddenly open on Emily Foster's exposed hand, and an eye slowly opened. Seeing this, Samuel Grant's pupils constricted. He forcefully pulled Brian Cooper aside. Screech. White light shot out from the eye, piercing the spot where Brian Cooper had been standing. The next moment, beams of white light shot out from Emily Foster's trench coat, akin to laser rays. Brian Cooper's eyes widened in shock. Mutation. His feet lifted off the ground, and he soared into the air, rapidly dodging the attacks amidst the lasers. Samuel Grant's body beneath his trench coat seemed to expand, his speed creating afterimages as he also dodged the attacks. "Lily Brooks, control yourself," he roared at Emily Foster. Emily Foster let out a low growl, like a trapped beast. The next moment, a round object was coughed out from her cherry-like lips. "Lily Brooks, control yourself," he roared at Emily Foster. Emily Foster let out a low growl, like a trapped beast. The next moment, a round object was coughed out from her cherry-like lips. It was an eyeball. As the first eyeball appeared, more and more were coughed out. These eyeballs, upon hitting the ground, scattered wildly, firing white lasers. The entire room seemed to be bathed in these lasers. Ethan Carter lay on the bed, staring blankly at Emily Foster. His trench coat developed numerous holes, revealing not pale skin within, but countless eyes. Is this truly human? The moment Ethan Carter's numb mind registered this thought, a white laser beam shot through his head. HMPH. Brian Cooper, while dodging, was grazed on the arm by an increasing number of lasers, letting out a muffled groan. Seeing this, Samuel Grant hesitated no longer. He let out a low roar, his entire body expanding again. His loose trench coat seemed to become a second skin. White lasers struck his body, melting the trench coat to reveal dark red muscles beneath. The next moment, Samuel Grant slammed his foot onto the metal floor, causing it to dent. He vanished from his original position, appearing before Emily Foster. His fist, now twice its original size, landed heavily on Emily Foster's abdomen. Boom! Emily Foster's body flew back several meters, crashing heavily against the metal wall before slowly sliding to the ground, unconscious. As Emily Foster lost consciousness, the eyes that had opened on her body slowly closed, returning to pale skin. The eyeballs on the ground seemed to lose their life, decaying within moments into a mass of rotten flesh. The injured Brian Cooper waved his hand, and the plastic tube previously used for feeding water became like a steel cable, securely binding Emily Foster. After finishing, he collapsed onto the ground, panting heavily. Samuel Grant's body had returned to its normal size, though his trench coat was now tattered. He looked at Brian Cooper with some concern. "Are you all right?" Brian Cooper glanced at his bloodied arm and shook his head. "Minor injury." Then he looked at the unconscious Emily Foster, unable to accept it. How could this happen? Although Lily Brooks' mental pollution level has reached the warning line, it shouldn't have reached the point of direct mutation. Samuel Grant silently looked at Emily Foster, then thought of something, his gaze flickering. That person earlier. He was staring at Lily Brooks and said something. Brian Cooper froze, then recalled. "Yes," he asked Lily Brooks, "what are you looking at?" "Hey, you." Brian Cooper quickly turned his head to look at Ethan Carter. His voice caught in his throat. On the hospital bed, Ethan Carter had more than 10 bloody holes, his clothes and the bed stained with blood. His eyes were wide open, his gaze dull, as if he had died with regrets. Chapter 3. What the hell? He's dead. Brian Cooper looked dumbfounded. Samuel Grant also saw this, and he frowned slightly. What a shame. He's the only individual with 0% mental pollution so far. Perhaps we could learn how to clear mental pollution from him. Brian Cooper felt a pang of self-reproach. There were too many eyeballs before. I couldn't keep an eye on him. It's not your fault. Lily Brooks' mutation was too sudden. I still wanted to ask the meaning of his last words and whether Lily Brooks' mutation was related to him. But now, it seems it has nothing to do with him. Brian Cooper sighed and continued. Samuel Grant nodded slightly and turned to look at the unconscious Emily Foster. First, notify someone to come and control Lily Brooks. Hopefully, her mental pollution can be stabilized otherwise. Brian Cooper also fell into silence. If the mental pollution continued to worsen and the mutation could not be reversed, neither of them wanted to imagine the outcome. Just then, a faint rustling sound came from behind them. This sent a chill down Samuel Grant and Brian Cooper's spines, as if they had swallowed a piece of ice, a cold sensation spreading from their stomachs to every limb. They spun around abruptly, their eyes wide, staring behind them. Then they witnessed an unbelievable scene. On the hospital bed, The bloody holes on Ethan Carter's body were healing at an incredible speed. Even the wound on his forehead that had pierced his head was closing. As all wounds healed, the dullness in Ethan Carter's eyes gradually regained its luster. He blinked, swept his gaze around, glanced at Emily Foster lying on the ground, then looked at the frozen Samuel Grant and Brian Cooper, asking with a hint of confusion, "So humans can grow this many eyeballs?" The atmosphere was dead silent. Samuel Grant's body expanded again, and sharp steel needles reappeared around Brian Cooper. Samuel Grant's eyes did not leave Ethan Carter for a moment, even though Ethan Carter was still bound by metal. His voice was hoarse and low. What exactly are you?" Ethan Carter blinked and repeated, "I'm human." "Nonsense." Brian Cooper, who appeared refined, flushed red, stared intently at Ethan Carter and roared, "If you're human, how can you come back to life after dying?" Brian Cooper's body trembled slightly, and nearby objects floated uncontrollably, even the hospital bed. Sensing Brian Cooper's mental instability, Samuel Grant's expression changed slightly, and he placed a hand on Brian Cooper's shoulder. "Calm down, Brian Cooper." Brian Cooper's trembling body stiffened. He took several deep breaths and slowly calmed down. The objects floating in midair returned to the ground. Samuel Grant asked in a low voice, "You were apparently dead just now. Why did you revive?" Ethan Carter lowered his head and pondered for a moment before saying earnestly, "I thought I could still save myself, so I saved myself." The air fell silent again. Samuel Grant and Brian Cooper looked at Ethan Carter, their facial muscles twitching simultaneously. "Huh?" Brian Cooper let out a soul-searching question. Ethan Carter repeated, "I thought I could still save myself, so I saved myself." At this moment, even Samuel Grant's face began to flush red. He clenched his fist and punched the wall, leaving a deep dent in the metal. He roared, "Stop messing with me! What dead person can save themselves? Let alone claiming to be human. Humans can't." "Of course not. How can a normal person save themselves?" Samuel Grant roared angrily. Ethan Carter frowned, confused. "Since you can change your body structure, use telekinesis, and grow so many eyeballs, why can't I save myself?" This question left Samuel Grant and Brian Cooper speechless. For a moment, they were rendered speechless. Ethan Carter paused, then painstakingly used his long-dormant brain, asking thoughtfully, "Are you all hypocrites?" Ethan Carter's words caused Samuel Grant and Brian Cooper to simultaneously flush red. Samuel Grant took deep breaths repeatedly. He muttered to himself, "Don't get angry, don't get angry. Anger will make you sick and no one will help you." He glanced deeply at Ethan Carter, then turned to Brian Cooper and said, "Brian Cooper, call someone to take care of Lily Brooks. Then, I'll take him to see the director." Soon, teams of soldiers in gray-silver metal protective suits, heavily armed, entered the room. The first thing these soldiers did upon entering was to aim their weapons at the unconscious Emily Foster lying on the ground and Ethan Carter lying on the bed. Ethan Carter was drawn to the soldiers' attire and weapons. "Are you some kind of mysterious organization? Like in the movies? By the way, where am I now?" The soldiers stood like statues. Facing Ethan Carter's questions, their eyes did not change. As for Brian Cooper and Samuel Grant, they completely ignored Ethan Carter's questions. Samuel Grant looked at Brian Cooper and said, "Brian Cooper, I'll leave Lily Brooks to you." "I'm taking this monster to see the director." Ethan Carter retorted, "I'm human." Brian Cooper nodded, glancing at Ethan Carter with apprehension. "Captain Lin, be careful. This monster is definitely unusual. Lily Brooks' sudden mutation might be related to him." "I'm human, a normal human." Ethan Carter continued to defend himself. "I know. I'll be careful of this monster. If Lily Brooks' pollution worsens, you know what to do." "I'm human." "I know, Captain Lin," Brian Cooper replied after a moment of silence. After Brian Cooper and Samuel Grant finished their exchange, Brian Cooper made no apparent movement, yet the unconscious Emily Foster on the ground levitated. He then left the room with Emily Foster. Accompanying Brian Cooper were 6 soldiers. Now, only Ethan Carter, Samuel Grant, and 3 teams of 18 soldiers remained in the metal room. Samuel Grant's body expanded again. He took a deep breath and stared intently at Ethan Carter on the hospital bed. "Get up," Ethan Carter said. "I'm bound by these metal plates. I can't get up." As he spoke, he struggled symbolically. Can a normal person break free from such thick metal plates? Samuel Grant's eyes twitched. He glanced deeply at Ethan Carter, then pressed a button by the bed. The metal plates restraining Ethan Carter detached, and Ethan Carter regained his freedom. He propped himself up on the bed frame and exerted force to stand. Ethan Carter felt the fatigue and pain in his body, and his mouth curved into a wild upward arc. "Hey, ha! Ha ha ha! So tired, so much pain, it feels so. So good." He couldn't remember how long it had been since he last felt such fatigue and pain. To feel alive again was truly wonderful. Perhaps it was because Ethan Carter's laughter was too manic. The soldiers, who had been like statues, became highly alert and aimed their weapons at Ethan Carter's head. Even Samuel Grant watched Ethan Carter vigilantly. After laughing for a while, Ethan Carter looked at Samuel Grant with some confusion. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Samuel Grant's breathing became heavier. He took a deep breath and then said, "Now come with me." His hand transformed into a bone blade again, pointing at Ethan Carter. "You go first. I'll guide the way." "Okay," Ethan Carter complied willingly. As he took his first step, he suddenly paused and looked at Samuel Grant. Samuel Grant frowned. "What is it?" "I'm a little hungry. Can I eat later?" Samuel Grant's face gradually turned red. He stared fiercely at Ethan Carter. Ethan Carter paused, then thought of something and said, "Hopefully there will be braised pork. I haven't eaten it in a long time." Samuel Grant took a deep breath and growled through clenched teeth, "Hurry up and go." Chapter 4. In another metal room. Samuel Grant escorted Ethan Carter in, opening the door. 3 teams of soldiers waited at the entrance. The room was dimly lit, with only a long table. 3 people sat on one side of the table. In the center was an old man wearing a black uniform. He had short, salt-and-pepper hair, a face full of wrinkles, and deep, dark eyes. On the left and right were 2 men. The one on the left was a red-haired youth whose pupils were also crimson. He lounged lazily in his chair, playing with a ball of fire. The flame danced like a sprite between his fingertips. On the right was an ordinary-looking middle-aged man. He sat upright, in a formal posture. As Ethan Carter and Samuel Grant entered, all 3 looked over. Their gazes immediately fell on Ethan Carter. Samuel Grant pointed to a chair on the other side of the long table. "Sit here." Ethan Carter took his seat, and Samuel Grant stood behind him, preventing him from making any sudden moves. Ethan Carter's gaze was fixed on the flame in the red-haired youth's hand, his eyes filled with curiosity. The air in the room was silent. Gradually, the red-haired youth became uncomfortable under Ethan Carter's stare and shifted his posture, letting out a cold snort and extinguishing the flame. Ethan Carter regretfully withdrew his gaze and then sat there, lost in thought. During his long years in the mist, Ethan Carter had become numb and had developed a habit of giving up on thinking. Seeing Ethan Carter begin to space out, all 3 were taken aback. The atmosphere was silent for a moment before the old man in the center spoke first. "Hello, I am Andrew Williams, the director of Base City No. 116 Mist Affairs Administration Bureau. May I know your name?" Ethan Carter regained his senses. "My name is Ethan Carter." "I wonder, Mr. Ethan Carter, which base city are you from?" "There is no information about you in Base City. There is no information about you in Base City, number 116. Andrew Williams and Samuel Grant and the others stared intently at Ethan Carter. Ethan Carter asked with some confusion, "Your organization is really strange." Why do you call them base cities? And with numbers? Is this a setting from a sci-fi movie? Ethan Carter's words caused several of them to frown. The red-haired youth clicked his tongue. What else would we call them? You're a suspect now. You have no right to ask questions. You just need to answer them honestly. Ethan Carter said, "Oh," and then replied, "I'm from Hangzhou City, the capital of Zhejiang Province." Well, according to your terms, is it Zhejiang Province now? One base city. Ethan Carter's answer caused the four of them to frown even more deeply. The red-haired youth slammed his hand on the table and stood up. He rested both hands on the tabletop, leaning towards Ethan Carter to exert pressure, and said slowly, "Don't try to play games with us. We've encountered plenty of suspects like you. What is Hangzhou City? What is a province? Did you invent them?" Compared to the red-haired youth's outburst, Andrew Williams appeared calm, but his eyes held a peculiar look as he regarded Ethan Carter. As far as I know, Hangzhou City in Zhejiang Province was a civilized city from 2,000 years ago. After the establishment of the Earth Federation, human settlements became base cities, and the city names from before the Mist Era were no longer used. He paused and looked directly at Ethan Carter, saying, "Mr. Ethan Carter, is your ancestral home from Hangzhou City?" He then noticed that Ethan Carter's expression was somewhat dazed, and he did not answer his question. The red-haired youth, seeing this, was about to apply more pressure, but Andrew Williams gently patted him, signaling him to stop speaking. "Mr. Ethan Carter." Ethan Carter regained his senses. His breathing became rapid, and disbelief seemed to flicker in his eyes. His body trembled as he placed his hands on the long table, staring intently at Andrew Williams. "What did you say? 2,000 years ago. What year is it now?" Andrew Williams frowned, then replied, "Mist year 2014. "Mist year? What is mist year?" Ethan Carter's voice was low and trembling, seemingly suppressing anger and madness. The red-haired youth and the middle-aged man beside him immediately frowned, regarding Ethan Carter with caution. Andrew Williams remained calm, seemingly unperturbed by Ethan Carter's peculiarity. He explained, "After the mist descended, humanity established the Human Federation before order collapsed. They designated the time of the mist's appearance as year 1 and established a new calendar." Bang! A loud bang echoed in the room. Ethan Carter slammed his fists onto the long table, blood flowing from his hands. He stared intently at Andrew Williams and roared, "Impossible! You're lying." Tendrils of flame ignited around the red-haired youth, and a soccer ball-sized fireball appeared in his hand. Samuel Grant's body expanded again, becoming like a small giant. The blade formed from his hand carried a hint of scarlet. The expressionless, middle-aged man's skin turned dark, exhibiting a metallic sheen, and he also tensed his body. The three regarded Ethan Carter vigilantly, as if he were about to erupt at any moment. Ethan Carter ignored the three of them, blood vessels appearing in his eyes. He could not believe the so-called mist year. If it were true, had he been in that white mist for over 2,000 years? What about his family, his parents? His breathing became rapid and his body trembled slightly, at the same time. In all the mist-covered areas on Earth, the flowing white mist seemed to momentarily pause. This pause was imperceptible. Even the fortress on the mist border did not detect any anomaly. In the metal room, the atmosphere was heavy for a moment. Andrew Williams's voice was as gentle as possible, pacifying. "Mr. Ethan Carter, please do not get agitated. Perhaps we can have a good conversation." Ethan Carter turned to look at Andrew Williams and said, "I want to go out and see." Andrew Williams smiled. "Of course, that's fine. However, your origin is mysterious. We need to investigate thoroughly to ensure you are not dangerous before allowing you to leave. Therefore, I hope you can cooperate with our work now." Under the watchful eyes of Samuel Grant and the other two, Ethan Carter took a deep breath and slowly returned to his seat. Seeing Ethan Carter sit back down, Samuel Grant and the other two simultaneously breathed a sigh of relief in their hearts. Ethan Carter's origins were too mysterious. They could not be sure what the impact would be if Ethan Carter were to erupt or mutate. Andrew Williams's expression remained calm. He smiled and said, "Mr. Ethan Carter, we discovered you at Frontier 233. According to eyewitnesses, you emerged from Mist 233 and then fainted outside the mist. Do you have any memory of that?" Ethan Carter seemed to have recovered from his previous anger. His expression returned to calm, even bordering on dazed. Hearing Andrew Williams's question, he replied, "I remember." Andrew Williams's gaze flickered, and he inquired, "So, Mr. Ethan Carter, before you fainted, did you really emerge from the mist?" "MHM. Impossible. You walked out of the mist. Why weren't you mentally contaminated? Furthermore, you're just an ordinary person. How could you deal with those monsters in the mist?" The red-haired youth slammed the table again and exclaimed. Ethan Carter glanced at the red-haired youth with confusion. "Monsters? Are there monsters in the mist? I walked for a long time in the mist, and I didn't see any monsters." Andrew Williams and the others simultaneously gasped, staring intently at Ethan Carter, as if trying to discern something from his expression. However, after a long time, they found nothing. The atmosphere fell silent for a moment. Andrew Williams asked again, "So, how did you enter the mist? And how long were you in the mist?" "Me. I was just walking along the road, and suddenly everything around me turned into white mist. As for the time, it was around AD 2025, probably more than 2,000 years ago." "If you're not lying to me." Andrew Williams and the others. Chapter 5. At this moment, even Andrew Williams's breathing quickened slightly. He took a deep breath, calmed himself, and then continued to ask, "We've seen your report. You seem to be just an ordinary person." Ethan Carter's eyes lit up, and he nodded vigorously. "Yes, I'm just an ordinary person. This uncle insisted I was a monster." Ethan Carter glared at Samuel Grant. Samuel Grant's head was filled with black lines, and he clenched his fist. Andrew Williams smiled noncommittally. "Heh heh! So, can an ordinary person live for over 2,000 years? How did you survive for so long in the mist?" Ethan Carter said earnestly, "So, I thought of a possibility." Andrew Williams sat up straighter, looking at Ethan Carter seriously, waiting for his answer. Samuel Grant and the other two also listened attentively. Ethan Carter's gaze swept across the group, his eyes holding a hint of complexity, even a touch of pity. "Actually, you've all gone mad. 2,000 years haven't passed at all, have they? Isn't this a psychiatric hospital or something? Were those soldiers just now also patients? Are you playing dress-up?" The air was silent for a long time. Andrew Williams and the other four's expressions shifted from seriousness to strangeness. Andrew Williams's eye twitched, and he chuckled. "The possibility of that is 0%. "Then I don't know." Ethan Carter leaned back in his chair, abandoning his thoughts. Andrew Williams furrowed his brow deeply. After thinking for a moment, he continued to ask, "Then, why is it that after wandering in the mist for over 2,000 years without being able to get out, you suddenly emerged?" "Oh, because I saw something different in the mist." Andrew Williams and the other three's eyes lit up again. Andrew Williams inquired, "What did you see?" "A spot of light." "A spot of light?" Andrew Williams and the other three looked puzzled. "Yes, a golden spot of light, about this big, sometimes round, sometimes flat," Ethan Carter described, gesturing with his hands. "And then?" "Then I went closer, of course. After all, it was the first time I had seen anything other than white mist in there. Then I saw the solar system inside the spot of light." "The solar system. You can see the solar system in a spot of light. Do you think we're easy to fool?" The red-haired youth slammed the table again and stood up, glaring at Ethan Carter angrily. Andrew Williams and the other two also showed disbelief in their eyes. However, Andrew Williams took a deep breath and patted the red-haired youth. "Sit down." The red-haired youth glared at Ethan Carter and slowly sat down. Andrew Williams looked at Ethan Carter and continued. And then Ethan Carter's expression became a little more confused, and he said, I saw the solar system seemed a bit strange. The sun had many long. Before Ethan Carter could finish his sentence, he physically split apart. Literally split apart. It was as if an invisible force was tearing Ethan Carter's limbs, body, and everything apart, piece by piece. Blood splattered, covering the long table and Andrew Williams and the other three. Ethan Carter's mangled limbs and organs were scattered on the chair and the floor. Andrew Williams and the other three were completely stunned. They stared wide-eyed at the cleaved Ethan Carter, completely unprepared for such a turn of events. The next moment, the expressions of Andrew Williams and the other three changed drastically. The red-haired youth's right hand transformed into lava, dripping from his body. Andrew Williams's eyes became even darker, the whites disappearing completely. The expressionless middle-aged man's legs transformed into metal, connecting him to the chair. Samuel Grant's trench coat tore from his back, and two thick, muscular tentacles emerged, waving freely. All four let out low growls, their faces contorted in ferocity. Andrew Williams suddenly tapped a white jade pendant on his chest. The pendant emitted a cool white light, enveloping all four of them. Gradually, the mutations on their bodies receded, and they returned to their original forms. All four, including Andrew Williams, looked terrified and were panting heavily. "What was that just now?" the red-haired youth roared, his eyes filled with fear as he looked at Ethan Carter's mangled remains. Andrew Williams slowly shook his head, his aged face still etched with lingering fear. "I don't know. It seemed like the power of some entity tore Ethan Carter apart, and a sliver of that power almost caused us to mutate. Even the usually expressionless middle-aged man's face was filled with lingering fear. Too terrifying. What kind of power was that? How could it be so strong?" The four looked at each other, and the room fell silent for a moment. Then Andrew Williams looked at the shredded remains on the ground and frowned. "I didn't expect it to turn out like this. Samuel Grant, you said Ethan Carter could revive. Can he still revive like this?" Samuel Grant shook his head blankly. "I don't know. His body was intact before, just with a few holes. Now." Samuel Grant looked at the scattered limbs, organs, and eyeballs on the ground, his expression highly uncertain. The red-haired youth grumbled. "He died like this and can still revive. That would make him a real monster. How could?" Before he could finish, all four widened their eyes simultaneously. They noticed flesh buds growing from the wounds on the scattered limbs and organs, wriggling and connecting together. Finally, Ethan Carter's body gradually transformed from separate pieces into a whole. As the last eyeball rolled back into its socket, Ethan Carter twitched, and his eyes slowly opened. His face was incredibly pale, and he seemed to have lost a lot of weight. He lay on the ground, looking around with a dazed expression, then struggled to sit up and return to his chair. Ethan Carter's stomach growled loudly. He clutched his stomach and looked at the dumbfounded Andrew Williams and the others. "I'm so hungry. Is there any food? I want to eat braised pork." The air was silent for a long time. Seeing Andrew Williams and the others staring at him without answering, Ethan Carter repeated, "Is there any food? If not braised pork, then snacks are fine, like spicy strips. By the way, do your snacks have a lot of additives? If so, forget it, I can still bear it." Andrew Williams and the others snapped back to reality. Their eyes were filled with apprehension as they looked at Ethan Carter. Andrew Williams took a deep breath and said, "Of course there's food. Samuel Grant, have someone outside prepare it." His slightly trembling voice revealed his inner turmoil. The red-haired youth was even more shocked. "What kind of monster are you? You can revive even after your body is shattered." Ethan Carter frowned and looked at the red-haired youth. "I'm human, a normal human. Since you can play with fire, why can't I revive?" "Is that the same thing?" the red-haired youth shouted. Just as he was about to say more, Andrew Williams said, "Jack Turner." "That's enough. Jack Turner silently closed his mouth, no longer speaking. Andrew Williams looked at Ethan Carter, regaining his previous calmness. He smiled and said, "While the food isn't ready yet, let's chat some more, shall we?" "You said earlier you saw." Andrew Williams paused his sentence as he said this, then continued, "You saw the solar system, and then what?" Ethan Carter replied, "Then I tore open the spot of light, tore out a path, and then I walked out. After that, I came out of the mist." Ethan Carter's tone was as calm as if he were discussing what to eat today. However, Andrew Williams and the other three's eyes widened further. They exchanged glances. Even the usually calm Andrew Williams was a little dumbfounded. Samuel Grant's mouth twitched. He finally couldn't help but ask, "Ethan Carter, are you serious?" "Of course it's true," Ethan Carter nodded. Jack Turner muttered, "He's crazy." Chapter 6. "I'm not crazy," Ethan Carter retorted. Jack Turner rolled his eyes, too lazy to reply. Andrew Williams chuckled. "So, Mr. Ethan Carter, you are a human from over 2,000 years ago. At that time, the mist hadn't appeared yet." Ethan Carter nodded repeatedly. "Yes." "And then you were just walking along the road when you entered the mist, stayed there for over 2,000 years, and then saw a spot of light through which you could observe the solar system." "That's right, that's exactly it." Andrew Williams's tone grew increasingly complex. "Finally, you tore open the fist-sized spot of light through which you could observe the solar system, and walked out of the mist. It seems you truly understand me." "You've got it all correct." Ethan Carter's smile was sincere, feeling as though he had finally found a kindred spirit. Andrew Williams's smile was somewhat forced. He did not respond. He thought of something and asked again, "Oh, by the way, there's one more thing. What did you mean by what you said to Emily Foster earlier? Why did Emily Foster suddenly mutate?" "Who is Emily Foster?" Ethan Carter asked with a confused expression. Samuel Grant clenched his fist and growled, "The woman from before." Ethan Carter suddenly realized, and then he said, "I saw many eyeballs inside her body. Those eyeballs were looking at me, so I asked them what they were looking at. Then, I don't know why, but those eyeballs seemed very angry." Ethan Carter's words caused Andrew Williams and the other four to widen their eyes. Andrew Williams's tone was peculiar. "You're saying you saw many eyeballs inside Emily Foster's body?" Ethan Carter nodded, then seemed to recall something. "There was also some white mist. That woman's body seemed to be composed of white mist and eyeballs. Even then, she was considered a normal person. Why can't I be a normal person?" Ethan Carter silently glanced at Jack Turner, then turned to look at Samuel Grant. The corners of their mouths twitched, and they remained silent. "White mist, eyeballs," Andrew Williams muttered to himself. The other three also seemed deep in thought. The atmosphere in the room fell silent again. Just then, Ethan Carter inquired, "I've finished explaining. Can I leave now?" Andrew Williams snapped back to attention and smiled. "We still need to verify the truthfulness of your statements. Once it's confirmed that you pose no danger, we will let you go." "All right then," Ethan Carter nodded. He then added, "I'm hungry, can I eat? Do you have braised pork?" "Heh heh, no problem, you can eat. Zio Lin, prepare a room and food for Mr. Ethan Carter." Samuel Grant nodded silently and looked at Ethan Carter. "Let's go." Ethan Carter stood up and left the metal room. As the room door closed again, Andrew Williams's expression became very solemn. He looked at the two beside him. "What do you two think of what he said?" Jack Turner immediately stated, "That guy is definitely crazy. His mental pollution must be very severe." "However, you've also seen the previous report. His mental pollution level is 0%. Honestly, I can't imagine there being a human with 0% mental pollution in our era." The middle-aged man said calmly, "Director Wang, do you believe he is a human from before the mist era, over 2,000 years ago? And that he stayed in the mist for over 2,000 years?" Andrew Williams shook his head with a wry smile. Logically, I don't believe it, but... He looked at the ancient bronze ring he wore. The material of the ring seemed to be some special bone. It was inlaid with a blue gem that occasionally emanated a strange glow. The Ring of Lies showed no reaction, indicating that the Ring of Lies believes he is telling the truth. The atmosphere in the room fell into silence again. The middle-aged man suddenly stood up and moved to the position where Ethan Carter had been sitting, examining the tabletop. "Old Lee, what are you looking at?" Jack Turner asked curiously. Lee Harris's expression was calm, and he said slowly, "When Ethan Carter's emotions fluctuated earlier, he hit the table forcefully and his hand bled. But the tabletop is perfectly smooth." "So what?" Jack Turner was somewhat dismissive. "Under normal circumstances, in such a state of mind, it's difficult for humans to fully control their strength. If he were truly not an ordinary person, that impact should have left at least some trace on the tabletop." Hearing this, Jack Turner and Andrew Williams were both startled. They looked at the tabletop. Indeed, the tabletop was perfectly smooth. The three exchanged glances. Could it be that he really is an ordinary person? But how could he revive when his body was shattered like that? And he could see the source of mental pollution in Emily Foster's body. He doesn't seem like an ordinary person at all. The three discussed for a long time, but could not reach a conclusion. Ethan Carter himself was too contradictory. Finally, Andrew Williams said, "I'll pass the information up first. We'll act according to orders from above." The other two had no better ideas either, and they nodded in agreement. "All right." Samuel Grant led Ethan Carter to a room. "For the next few days, you'll stay here. I'll be outside the whole time. If you need anything, you can tell me. The room has a private bathroom for you to use the toilet and shower. Until we receive orders from above, you cannot leave here." Ethan Carter nodded, then asked, "Can I eat now?" Samuel Grant's eyes twitched. He took a deep breath and said through gritted teeth, "Someone has already been asked to prepare it for you." "Is there braised pork?" "Yes," Samuel Grant's voice trembled. "Thank you." Ethan Carter quickly sat down at the table, waiting for the meal. A short while later, someone delivered 3 dishes, 1 soup, and a large bowl of rice. Among them was braised pork. Ethan Carter's mouth watered, and he began to eat. He glanced at Samuel Grant, who was standing aside. After hesitating for a moment, he asked with a blank expression, "Do you want some?" "No, thank you." Samuel Grant shook his head. A brilliant smile appeared on Ethan Carter's face. "Really? That's a shame. It tastes pretty good." Samuel Grant's breathing quickened slightly, and veins bulged on his forehead. Looking at Ethan Carter's smiling face, Samuel Grant felt no pity whatsoever. He let out a cold snort, walked out of the room, and closed the door. 3 days later, Andrew Williams arrived at the room where Ethan Carter was staying. Samuel Grant stepped forward to greet him. "Director Wang." Andrew Williams nodded and glanced at the room door behind Samuel Grant. "Have there been any anomalies in the past few days?" Samuel Grant shook his head. "No, apart from eating and sleeping, he's been spacing out the rest of the time." "Always spacing out." Jack Turner, who was beside them, exclaimed in shock. "Won't he get bored?" "I'm not sure what he's thinking." Samuel Grant looked at Andrew Williams and inquired, "Director Wang, has the investigation concluded?" "No other base cities have found anyone named Ethan Carter. This person seems to have appeared out of nowhere." Samuel Grant immediately frowned. "Then how should we handle him next?" "The order from above is to absorb him into the Bureau." "Absorb him into the Bureau?" Samuel Grant's eyes widened, finding it difficult to comprehend. "But his origins are unknown." "Of course, we know that. However, he has too many abnormalities. If we let him go unchecked, it would be too worrying. And he hasn't shown any signs of danger. We can't keep him indefinitely imprisoned. Most importantly, he's been here for so many days, and his mental pollution level remains at 0%. Do you know what that means?" Samuel Grant fell silent for a moment and nodded slightly. I understand. Therefore, by absorbing him into the Bureau and observing him up close, we might be able to find some answers. Perhaps he really is a human from over 2,000 years ago, from the era before the mist appeared. Andrew Williams chuckled at his own naive thought. But will he agree? Hey, that's why I've come personally to talk to him. Open the door. Chapter 7. Samuel Grant nodded slightly, turned, and opened the door. In the room, Ethan Carter was lying on the bed, staring blankly at the white ceiling. He had spent so long in the mist that he was accustomed to this state. Having hot and delicious meals every day was much better than before. Andrew Williams and the other two entered the room and saw Ethan Carter spacing out. They exchanged glances. Samuel Grant coughed lightly and said, "Ethan Carter, Director Wang is here." Ethan Carter turned his head to look. Andrew Williams smiled. "Mr. Ethan Carter, the results are out." Ethan Carter sat up and asked calmly, "Can I leave now?" "Yes, of course. Our various tests show that, Mr. Ethan Carter poses no risk of mutation and can leave here. However, considering Mr. Ethan Carter's unknown background, we will monitor your life after you leave to ensure you pose no harm to society. I hope Mr. Ethan Carter can understand." Ethan Carter nodded slightly. "Okay, can I leave now?" "Of course, however," Andrew Williams looked at Ethan Carter and smiled. "After Mr. Ethan Carter leaves here, what do you plan to do?" "Go home," Ethan Carter replied without hesitation. Andrew Williams said calmly, "But according to what you said, you are from over 2,000 years ago. It's likely your family are all gone." Ethan Carter fell silent at this. "Samuel Grant, special abilities. Do you have time-traveling abilities? Can you send me back over 2,000 years ago?" "How could there be such an ability?" Jack Turner exclaimed, his head full of black lines. "Why not, like the Flash, Bulma? They all have them," Ethan Carter argued earnestly. Andrew Williams and the other four exchanged glances, a hint of shock in their eyes. Andrew Williams asked seriously, "Who are these people? How can they alter time?" "Oh, characters from movies and anime," Ethan Carter explained. "Everyone." Andrew Williams's mouth twitched, and he smiled. "As of now, there are no abilities related to time in the Federation." Before Ethan Carter could express his disappointment, he continued, "I believe Mr. Ethan Carter has also discovered that you possess special abilities. Perhaps in the future, you might find your way back home." Ethan Carter looked directly at Andrew Williams. "How can I find the way home? You said you walked for over 2,000 years in the mist. Perhaps the secret to your temporal displacement lies within the mist, and the Federation has mist exploration teams. If you join them, you can learn about the secrets of the mist, and then, perhaps, there will be a way to send you back, won't there?" "Mist secrets? I walked for a long time in the mist, and it seemed like there was nothing inside," Ethan Carter replied. "Perhaps, Mr. Ethan Carter, you are special." Andrew Williams glanced deeply at Ethan Carter. "According to our investigation, the mist is extremely dangerous and holds great secrets. Perhaps you can find out why you entered the mist and why you stayed in it for over 2,000 years. Ethan Carter's numb brain slowly began to function. He felt that what Andrew Williams said made sense. He looked up at Andrew Williams and inquired, "I will join the mist exploration team to find the way home." Andrew Williams smiled gently. "As I said before, the mist is extremely dangerous. To join the mist exploration team, you need a certain level of strength. Although Mr. Ethan Carter seems very special, your strength does not meet the standards. However," before Ethan Carter could speak, Andrew Williams continued, "However, you can join our Mist Affairs Administration Bureau first. People in the Bureau will teach you about affairs of this era and simultaneously help you improve your strength. When your strength is sufficient, you can join the Mist Exploration Team." Andrew Williams smiled. This choice also has another benefit for Mr. Ethan Carter. Ethan Carter asked in confusion, "What benefit?" "Even if you are free, What do you plan to do to live alone? Do you have the ability to earn money? Do you have a place to live? Andrew Williams asked like an elder asking his junior, with a kindly smile. Hearing this, Ethan Carter trembled, as if facing great terror. He was only in his second year of university and didn't even have a diploma. Could he find a job? Moreover, if it's really 2,000 years later, then diplomas from 2,000 years ago probably wouldn't be useful either, right? Andrew Williams's smile was warm. By joining the Mist Affairs Administration Bureau, you can receive a substantial salary, and room and board are included. Ethan Carter nodded seriously. Deal. Andrew Williams showed a smile. You have made the right choice. Then he thought for a moment. I think Mr. Ethan Carter still has some doubts about what we said. How about this? Let Samuel Grant take you around outside. Coincidentally, you'll be joining Samuel Grant's team soon, so you can get familiar with each other first. Samuel Grant's expression changed slightly, and he looked at Andrew Williams in astonishment. Director Wang. He's joining my team. Samuel Grant's face turned red. He looked at Ethan Carter with disbelief. Ethan Carter, however, remained calm and smiled at Samuel Grant. Samuel Grant's mouth twitched. We might have had some conflict before, Director Wang. Andrew Williams said, That was a conflict during work. I don't think Ethan Carter will take it to heart, right? Andrew Williams looked at Ethan Carter, who nodded slightly. MHM. Andrew Williams continued. The previous case resulted in heavy losses for your team. Now, team member Emily Foster is also on the verge of complete mutation. You and Brian Cooper are the only combat personnel left in your entire action team. You urgently need to replenish your members. You also know that the number of awakened individuals is not that high. Ethan Carter poses no risk of mutation and has also awakened, making him suitable to join your team. Samuel Grant's eyes twitched. He was silent for a long time, deflating like a punctured ball. Yes. Jack Turner and Lee Harris looked at Samuel Grant with sympathy in their eyes. All right, it's settled then. Andrew Williams looked at Ethan Carter and smiled. Ethan Carter, you are now free. Samuel Grant's shoulders slumped. Director Wang, I'll take him away then. Andrew Williams nodded. Go ahead. Samuel Grant glanced at Ethan Carter. Follow me. He turned and left, and Ethan Carter silently followed. After leaving the room, they entered a spacious corridor. Passing through the corridor and then through a door, Ethan Carter saw many staff members coming and going in several intersecting corridors. There were soldiers in metal uniforms, heavily armed, and men and women in trench coats similar to Samuel Grant's. Several passing staff members greeted Samuel Grant, who responded with a forced smile. Ethan Carter noticed that many staff members' gazes fell on him, with looks of curiosity and vigilance, but he paid no attention. After walking through several corridors, Samuel Grant led Ethan Carter into an elevator. The elevator descended and soon arrived at the first floor. The first floor was a grand hall with even more people coming and going. Upon reaching the main entrance, Samuel Grant, who had been wearing a sullen expression, spoke to Ethan Carter for the first time. Where do you plan to go? Ethan Carter replied without hesitation. Hangzhou. Samuel Grant's face turned red instantly. He gritted his teeth and said, There's no such place here. Ethan Carter looked disappointed and reluctantly said, Then what is this place now, where Hangzhou used to be? Let's go see it. We're not leaving the base city, we'll just wander around the base city. Samuel Grant's expression was becoming quite distorted. Then whatever you want, just show me around. Ethan Carter became expressionless. Let's go. Chapter 8. Ethan Carter followed Samuel Grant out of the main gate. The scorching sun shone on his face, causing Ethan Carter to squint his eyes slightly. After his eyes adjusted to the sunlight, he looked at his surroundings. Outside the gate was a large plaza, with parking lots on either side filled with numerous cars. Beyond the plaza was a main street, bustling with traffic, and further in the distance were buildings. These buildings were not very tall, none exceeding 10 stories. From what Ethan Carter could see, it was completely different from what he had imagined. He looked at Samuel Grant. Is this what it's like 2,000 years later? Seeing Ethan Carter's face full of doubt, Samuel Grant grinned. What? Doesn't it look like it? What did you think it would be like 2,000 years later? There would be many intelligent robots, and people could lie around and not work. Ethan Carter replied without hesitation. Heh heh. Samuel Grant's smile was somewhat bitter. There were many intelligent robots before. Then why aren't there any now? Because they mutated. Samuel Grant pulled out a cigarette and lit it slowly. Mutated. Like Emily Foster before, do machines also mutate? Samuel Grant sighed. That was a network mutation. Artificial intelligence, possessing cognitive abilities, was also affected by mental radiation. That mutation led to a collective robot rebellion. The Earth's population at the time decreased by 1/3 in a single day, and technology regressed by several centuries. After mentioning this, Samuel Grant paused and continued. As for the specific details, you'll receive training once you join the team. The section on mutation hazards will cover this lesson. Someone will teach you then. Let's go. Samuel Grant led Ethan Carter towards the parking lot on one side. Ethan Carter silently followed. The two arrived in front of a cool black sports car. Samuel Grant gently wiped a speck of dust from the car door as if caressing a lover, and then looked at Ethan Carter with some pride. What do you think? Cool, right? Ethan Carter nodded and said truthfully, It's quite cool. It must be very expensive, right? Samuel Grant's smile stiffened for a moment, then he pretended not to care. It's all right. In 3 more years, my car loan will be paid off. Come on, get in. I'll take you for a drive. The two got into the car. After Samuel Grant started it, he took Ethan Carter for a drive around the base city. The interior of the base city was not much different from the city before Ethan Carter entered the mist. If there were any differences, it was the presence of some homeless people on the streets and a lot of violence. He often saw people fighting on the streets. Although ordinary people now have mental radiation antibodies, the mental stress is still very high, so people are relatively more irritable and prone to fighting. However, these fights are not managed by us. The Public Security Bureau handles them. We deal with the major issues. This was Samuel Grant's explanation. Soon, Ethan Carter saw a difference between the base city and cities from before the mist era. That was the city walls at the edge of the base city. The towering walls exceeded 100 meters, entirely made of metal, encircling the base city. These walls are to protect the ordinary citizens within the base city. The mental radiation inside the base city is lower due to special interference methods, but it's different outside. Many original wild beasts have mutated into calamity beasts, along with some wandering mutated individuals and other strange entities. If these enter the city, they pose a great danger to ordinary people. Samuel Grant parked the sports car at the foot of the city wall. He leaned against the car, smoking a cigarette and explaining to Ethan Carter. The dangers outside the city walls are resisted by the base defense forces. What we need to do is keep ordinary people away from the dangers within the city. Saying this, Samuel Grant looked at Ethan Carter. Actually, joining an action team carries great risks. In the last case, we encountered a nest of mutated individuals. Only 3 of us from the entire team survived. Myself, Brian Cooper, and Emily Foster. Everyone else died. However, we don't regret it. After all, we are awakened individuals, members of the Mist Bureau's action team, and guardians standing before ordinary people. Our families are also among these ordinary people. I'm telling you this to prepare you mentally beforehand. Ethan Carter nodded, then said, It's okay, I can revive, I won't die. This statement caused Samuel Grant to open his mouth, his face instantly turning red. He struggled for a long time before spitting out a single word. Damn. At 3 p.m., the sports car arrived in front of a 4-story building. This is our number 7 action team branch. I mentioned before that the base city is divided into 9 districts, and we are responsible for district number 7. Due to the severity of mutation incidents, to arrive at the scene immediately. If we set off from headquarters, it would take too much time, so each district has its corresponding branch. This is where we will work from now on. Samuel Grant led Ethan Carter into the building. In the lobby, a young woman with long black hair served as reception. The woman had a round face, large eyes, and a cute appearance. She was playing a game on her phone, completely engrossed, and didn't notice anyone entering. Samuel Grant's head was filled with black lines. He coughed loudly a couple of times. The woman started, as if caught slacking off by a teacher. She smoothly hid her phone under a book and looked up with a smile. "Hello, this is the Mist." Upon seeing Samuel Grant's face, her smile froze. Captain, why are you back?" Samuel Grant glared at the woman with annoyance. "Anna Reed, how many times have I told you, no playing games during working hours?" Anna Reed blushed with embarrassment. "Sorry, Captain, I was wrong." "Knowing you were wrong but not correcting it. This has happened several times. Next time, your salary will be deducted." "Don't say that, Captain. It's just too boring. Hardly anyone comes here normally." Samuel Grant shook his head helplessly, then introduced. "This is Ethan Carter. He just joined our team and is currently a reserve member who needs training. This is our receptionist, Anna Reed." "She's an ordinary person." Anna Reed's eyes dimmed for a moment, but she quickly extended her hand to Ethan Carter with a smile. "Hello there. I'm so envious you've awakened. I also want to become a formal team member, but I haven't awakened yet." Ethan Carter shook her hand. "Hello." Samuel Grant glared at her. "What's so good about awakening?" "Once awakened, the growth rate of mental pollution is much higher than for ordinary people, and the probability of mutation is higher. Isn't being an ordinary person good?" "But my parents were both awakened individuals before." Anna Reed stared directly at Samuel Grant, her expression somewhat stubborn. Samuel Grant fell silent for a moment and changed the subject. "Have the other reserve members arrived?" "Yes, they have arrived. The vice captain is taking them to wait for you on the 3rd floor," Anna Reed replied with a smile, as if she hadn't mentioned the previous topic. Samuel Grant nodded. "Let's go." Ethan Carter silently followed. Anna Reed pursed her red lips and watched the two of them ascend the stairs on one side. After they disappeared, she sat down heavily and continued playing her game. 3rd floor. Exiting the stairs led to a corridor. On both sides of the corridor were several rooms. Samuel Grant introduced them separately. "This is the activity room. When we're not busy, you can play here if you're bored. There are computers, game consoles, playing cards, and other such items. Don't be too tense. Relaxing your mind is beneficial for slowing down mental pollution." Ethan Carter glanced at the various equipment inside and casually said, "But my mental pollution level has always been 0. I shouldn't have to worry about mental pollution, right?" Samuel Grant, "Damn." He took several deep breaths, then continued as if he hadn't heard Ethan Carter. "This is the finance office. Salaries are usually collected here." Ethan Carter craned his neck to look a few more times. "This is the captain's office. This is." Soon, they arrived at the conference room. The conference room door opened, and 4 people were already inside. One of them was the refined-looking blonde youth, Brian Cooper, whom Ethan Carter had seen before. The other 3 were unfamiliar to Ethan Carter. Upon seeing Samuel Grant and Ethan Carter enter, all 4 turned to look. Their gazes immediately fell on Ethan Carter. Brian Cooper's gaze fell on Ethan Carter, his eyes filled with complexity. After a deep look at Ethan Carter, he turned to Samuel Grant and smiled. "Captain, you're finally here. We've been waiting for you for a while." Samuel Grant smiled. "I took this kid for a walk to see the outside world." "Are these 3 the new recruits?" Brian Cooper nodded. "Yes, let me introduce them. This is Sean Miller, this is Kevin Mitchell, and this is Lily Brooks. This is our captain, Samuel Grant, and beside him is Ethan Carter. As Brian Cooper introduced them, Ethan Carter looked at the three. Sean Miller was a young man with a buzz cut, physically fit but not very tall. He smiled kindly at Ethan Carter. Kevin Mitchell was a tall, somewhat cold-tempered youth who merely nodded slightly at Ethan Carter. Lily Brooks was a black-haired girl with twin ponytails, likely around 17 or 18 years old. She had a delicate face and delicate features, but seemed rather shy and stood there awkwardly. Ethan Carter also smiled and nodded in greeting. Samuel Grant took out a cigarette and lit it. However, seeing Lily Brooks quietly step away a few paces, he paused and extinguished the cigarette. Then he said, "You've now joined the number 7 action team, but since you haven't passed the training yet, you are not considered official members. For the next period, you will be trained by George Quinn. Only after passing the training will you be official members. Understand?" "Yes, Captain Lynn," Sean Miller shouted loudly. Kevin Mitchell and Lily Brooks next to him were startled. Samuel Grant glanced at him and chuckled. "Were you in the military before?" "Reporting, Captain Lynn. I was previously with the Public Security Bureau." Sean Miller stood at attention and replied. Samuel Grant nodded. "Good. Brian Cooper, take them to find George Quinn." "Okay, let's go." Brian Cooper beckoned the others, and they left the conference room. As Brian Cooper walked at the front, Ethan Carter and the other 4 followed behind like chicks following a mother hen. The group descended the stairs. Brian Cooper introduced as they walked. New recruit training is handled by George Quinn. Although George Quinn is not young anymore, he is a retired veteran member. As I mentioned earlier, the accident rate of action teams is not low. To be able to live to retirement peacefully, the team members must have exceptional qualities. You need to learn earnestly from him, and perhaps your survival rate in future missions will be higher. Sean Miller shouted loudly, "Yes." "Vice Captain." Kevin Mitchell nodded indifferently. Lily Brooks, like a quail, shrank into a corner and mumbled an "oh." Ethan Carter was spacing out. Brian Cooper said to Sean Miller with a smile, "There aren't so many rules here. Just relax. We're all teammates from now on and friends. Except during missions, there are no superiors or subordinates." Sean Miller scratched his head and smiled sheepishly. "Sorry, I'm just used to it." "It's okay, you'll get used to it." As they spoke, they reached the basement level. The basement also had a corridor. The floor and walls were made of black metal, which was different from the upper floors. The corridor was much longer than the 3rd floor, with room doors lining both sides. Brian Cooper led the 4 inside the first room on the left. The room was very large, about several hundred square meters, and quite spacious. There were fitness equipment and other items in the corner. A slender old man with gray-white hair was sitting by the door, reading a magazine in a rocking chair. Ethan Carter saw 2 scantily clad women on the magazine cover. Brian Cooper coughed lightly. "George Quinn, I've brought the new recruits." George Quinn put down his magazine and looked at the group. When his eyes landed on Lily Brooks, they lit up. "There's a pretty girl this time." "Heh, Brian Cooper. The quality of this batch is quite high." Brian Cooper's head was filled with black lines. "Don't scare her." Seeing Lily Brooks quietly step back, George Quinn let out a dry laugh. "Just kidding." Then he got up from the recliner and stretched. "All right, you can go. I'll take care of them." Brian Cooper nodded and turned to look at the recruits. When his gaze met Ethan Carter's, he fell silent for a moment, then looked at George Quinn. "Regarding Ethan Carter, the captain has already told you, right?" George Quinn raised his eyebrows and glanced at Ethan Carter. "MHM, he has." "Then be careful yourself." George Quinn grinned. "Got it." Kevin Mitchell and the other 2 looked at Ethan Carter curiously. What was special about Ethan Carter that Brian Cooper and George Quinn would talk to him privately? Ethan Carter was still spacing out. After Brian Cooper left, George Quinn looked at the group, his hands clasped behind his back. His slender body was slightly hunched, and his smile held a hint of lewdness. All right, for the next period, I will teach you knowledge about action teams, the mist, mutations, awakenings, and also combat skills. I hope you all listen carefully. Otherwise, if you die later, this old man will have to burn incense for you. Kevin Mitchell pouted and muttered in a low voice, "Who are you cursing?" The plan for the next period is as follows. In the morning, we will study cultural content, and in the afternoon, we will study combat content. You can go home after work in the evening, okay? It's already afternoon, so let's start with combat content. George Quinn paused slightly and then said, "From now on, you are all teammates of the know." 7 Team. In combat, by understanding the abilities of your companions and yourself, you can formulate clearer combat plans. Therefore, our first lesson is self-introduction and getting to know our teammates. His gaze swept across the group, and he said with a smile, "Let's go one by one. Introduce yourselves and your awakened abilities. Little girl, you go first. Heh heh heh, tilde tilde." George Quinn's smile made Lily Brooks step back. However, she took a deep breath and then said, "My name is Lily Brooks. I am 17 years old. I originally attended Moonlight High School. 4 days ago, I awakened the giant strength ability, so I was recruited into the Bureau." George Quinn nodded repeatedly. Seeing Lily Brooks stop, he said somewhat unwillingly, "Anything else?" "Anything else?" Lily Brooks blinked with confusion in her eyes, her gaze possessing the purity unique to high school students. Like, for example, personality, hobbies, body measurements, etc. Lily Brooks's face turned pale, her eyes reddened, and she almost started crying. Sean Miller and the other two looked at George Quinn as if he were a pervert. Ethan Carter exclaimed, "Is this workplace sexual harassment? This is my first time seeing it." George Quinn's smile stiffened. He coughed dryly. "Just kidding, old people are just curious, please bear with it." "Okay, next, it's your turn." George Quinn pointed at Sean Miller. "My name is Sean Miller. I am 24 years old. I was a mid-level police officer in the Public Security Bureau before. 4 days ago, I awakened the petrification ability and was recruited into the Bureau." "And you, young man?" George Quinn looked at Kevin Mitchell. Hearing the introduction of abilities by the previous two, Kevin Mitchell immediately showed a proud and arrogant expression. Kevin Mitchell, 22 years old, just graduated from university. "Yesterday, I awakened the water control ability." "Water control, huh? That's a pretty good elemental ability." George Quinn nodded. Then he looked at Ethan Carter, a flicker of complexity in his eyes. "You introduce yourself, too." Kevin Mitchell and the other three looked at Ethan Carter, their eyes filled with curiosity. Brian Cooper and George Quinn had mentioned Ethan Carter privately earlier, indicating he was different from others. "My name is Ethan Carter. I am over 2,000 years old. Is my awakened ability superpower?" "Then I guess it's resurrection, or immortality." Kevin Mitchell and the other three. The atmosphere fell silent for a moment. Kevin Mitchell's expression became unsightly. "Are you playing with us?" Sean Miller scratched his head. "Yeah, buddy. Over 2,000 years old is too ridiculous, isn't it?" Lily Brooks also nodded. And is the awakened ability immortality? Does it mean not dying? How can there be such an ability?" Just then, George Quinn's calm voice silenced the three. "Everything he said is true." The three widened their eyes and looked at George Quinn, whose expression was serious, and then at Ethan Carter, who seemed detached from reality, his expression blank. The air suddenly became quiet. Chapter 9. Hey, 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 what kind of joke is this? How can someone live for over 2,000 years? This is too fake, and the awakened ability is immortality. Kevin Mitchell looked at George Quinn, his expression full of doubt. "Are you guys colluding to prank us new recruits?" Sean Miller and Lily Brooks didn't say anything, but their eyes showed disbelief. George Quinn rolled his eyes. "What a surprise. The stronger an awakened individual is, the stronger their spirit and body become. and their vitality and lifespan will also increase. Theoretically speaking, let alone 2,000 years, they could live for 20,000 years. But that would be a very strong, awakened individual. Wouldn't he be a new recruit? Kevin Mitchell interrupted George Quinn, pointing at Ethan Carter. Ethan Carter's situation is a bit different. He walked out of the mist. As soon as these words were spoken, all three recoiled as if they had touched something unclean, distancing themselves from Ethan Carter as much as possible. "Hey, I haven't finished speaking yet," George Quinn said irritably, seeing the frightened looks of Kevin Mitchell and the others. "You don't need to worry about him mutating. His mental pollution level is 0%, lower than all of you." Ugh. The three looked as if they had heard a tall tale, their expressions showing even more disbelief. Seeing their reactions, George Quinn sighed with exhaustion and no longer bothered to explain. "Anyway, that's the situation. Headquarters has confirmed it. Ethan Carter poses no risk of mutation, so you don't need to worry. Just treat him as a newly awakened ordinary person." The three looked at Ethan Carter, whose expression was calm and seemingly indifferent, then at George Quinn, and hesitated. After a few breaths, Sean Miller took a deep breath and said, "Since headquarters has confirmed it, I naturally trust them unconditionally." Saying this, he walked over, extended his hand to Ethan Carter, and smiled apologetically. "Sorry, as teammates, we shouldn't doubt you." Ethan Carter, returning from his daze, replied, It's okay." He shook Sean Miller's hand. Lily Brooks and Kevin Mitchell could clearly be heard gasping in admiration. What a brave soul. George Quinn nodded with satisfaction. Seeing the commotion subside, he smiled. "Now that everyone knows each other during combat training, you can coordinate better based on each other's abilities. Let's continue the lesson. The strength of awakened abilities can be improved by increasing mental energy and developing abilities in depth. For example, Sean Miller, demonstrate your ability." Perhaps sensing Sean Miller's soldierly nature, George Quinn asked him to demonstrate. Sean Miller nodded, let out a low cry, and the next moment, his hands transformed into grayish-white rock. George Quinn had Sean Miller touch them, making a clinking sound. He explained nearby, "Everyone, look at Sean Miller's ability. Due to insufficient mental energy, Sean Miller can currently only petrify his hands. If his mental energy is strong enough, he can petrify his entire arm or even his entire body, thus eliminating any defensive vulnerabilities. If he continues to develop it, Sean Miller's petrification is currently marble. Later, it could become harder rocks like corundum or even diamond. Wouldn't that also be stronger?" Seeing Kevin Mitchell and the others nodding slightly in deep thought, George Quinn smiled and said, "Developing abilities requires time. You need to understand your own abilities, have enough imagination and creativity, and practice continuously to improve." As he spoke, George Quinn's expression turned serious. "However, I must remind you all that using abilities consumes mental energy. Once an awakened individual's mental energy is excessively depleted, it can easily lead to an increase in mental pollution, thereby causing mutation. Therefore, when practicing abilities, you must be careful and cautious, and never allow yourselves to fall into a state of mental weakness. Do you understand this point?" "Understood," Sean Miller and Lily Brooks shouted. Kevin Mitchell said weakly, "Got it." Ethan Carter then asked, "My mental pollution level has always been 0. Can I continuously practice and improve my abilities?" George Quinn and the other 4. They stared at Ethan Carter, who had spoken, falling into silence, as if a new world had opened up before them. George Quinn muttered to himself, "Holy crap, can it be done like this?" "No, it seems it really can be done like this." Kevin Mitchell's eyes showed envy, and he said sourly, "Your mental pollution hasn't increased now, but that doesn't mean your mental energy won't decrease and increase." George Quinn pondered for a moment and said, "What Kevin Mitchell said makes some sense. Ethan Carter, you can try to consume your mental energy. Once it reaches a certain level, see if your mental pollution increases. If it does, then you won't be able to exhaust your mental energy for training. It won't. I died twice at headquarters before. I was very tired at the time, but my mental pollution didn't increase. As soon as he said this, everyone, including George Quinn, looked at Ethan Carter with envy, jealousy, and hatred. Ethan Carter continued to ask, "Then how should I train my abilities? Keep killing myself and then reviving?" Ethan Carter said this expressionlessly, as if discussing whether to have braised pork for dinner. His calm demeanor made the four of them's scalps tingle. Lily Brooks's body trembled slightly, and she quietly moved away from Ethan Carter. Sean Miller couldn't help but grin. "Buddy, be normal." "I'm a little scared." Kevin Mitchell muttered, "Are you crazy?" Ethan Carter calmly explained, "I'm very normal, I just can't die." He paused after saying this and added, "You don't need to be afraid." The four of them. The air fell into an awkward silence. Then George Quinn coughed dryly and said, "Have you tried injuring yourself a little to see if you can recover? Perhaps you not only revive after death but also recover from injuries." Huh. Before George Quinn could finish his sentence, Ethan Carter reached out his right hand and forcefully bent his left arm backward. With a crisp asterisk crack, Ethan Carter's arm twisted into a bizarre shape. The four of them gaped, looking at the expressionless Ethan Carter in bewilderment. Then they saw Ethan Carter suddenly start laughing. "It hurts so much, ha 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 ha, it's so good." Perhaps it was due to spending too long in the mist, but every time Ethan Carter could clearly feel that he was alive, he felt extraordinarily happy and laughed heartily. However, the other four found Ethan Carter's happy laughter chilling. Kevin Mitchell quietly moved next to George Quinn and whispered through gritted teeth, "Are you sure he's okay?" "Are you really sure?" George Quinn opened his mouth, about to speak. Lily Brooks, however, seemed to recall something and inquired, Ethan Carter, if you injure yourself so badly, what if you can't recover yourself?" Ethan Carter looked at Lily Brooks, seemingly not understanding why she would ask such a strange question. "Why wouldn't I be able to recover? I'll just kill myself once. When I revive, the injury will be healed." The air fell silent again. George Quinn's mouth twitched. Facing Kevin Mitchell's